Oi, we are live. Hey, friends, we are a couple minutes ahead of schedule, but that's because I want to pray with my friend Andrea before we start our live broadcast and discussion today. So join me for prayer. I want to pray for some of our friends who are feeling sick. We are in Sunnyvale, California, and it's a little bit of a hotspot for coronavirus freaking out. So there's legitimate health concerns, and there's also media response anxiety over it. And so we want to remember our community today in prayer, and always praying for her daughters are close friends of mine, so they're on my mind. And thinking about my family back in Arkansas too. So let me open with prayer, and then we'll get to know Andrea a little bit today. If anybody's out there and is having audio or visual problems, let me know, and I'll see if I can do anything on the fly. But it looks like we're up and running, so let's pray. Father in heaven, I am so blessed by the beauty of the day today, despite all the challenges that you see going on in the world. I do want to lift up my community to you in prayer today. I know that there are so many people who are worried about getting sick, who are taking precautions, thinking about our healthcare workers, and just asking that you would heal our land, and that you would lower our anxiety. And God, we know that there's some inevitable fallout from this health concern, but we want to keep living for you. We want to keep being lights and beacons in our community. And so, God, we ask that you would empower us with extra immunity, extra strength, extra positivity to be able to fight this on the spiritual side. We ask that you would empower our medical professionals to fight it on the physical side. Today, I want to ask that you would be with me and with Andrea as she shares some of the stories of obstacles that you've helped her overcome. And I'm thinking of her sweet girls, just asking that you would provide good friends for them, good influences, great opportunities, that you would prosper them. And I'm thinking about my family and the families of those who are watching. God, anyone touched by this message, I just want to ask for extra Holy Spirit power for them to overcome the things that are challenges in their lives as well as in mine. Just be with us today, God, and thank you for another day of breath and life. Amen.
Amen.
Yay.
Yay.
All right. We want to start out kind of not light and fluffy, but on the less intense side.
Is it going to be intense? You didn't tell me that.
Yeah. Well, it sounded intense. I think every life story has a bit of those, spots. So I've known you for a little over a year now.
You're actually longer than that, because you met Emily years ago.
That's right.
At camp meeting.
Yes. And still on our way to getting to know each other. Right. Yeah, definitely.
But as far as
3 years,
right?
Then. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
But being in the same community, a little over a year now.
Right. And the way that you spend most of your time is at an art studio.
Yes.
And you actually get dollars for doing things that you love.
I do. Lately with this COVID scare, not so many dollars. People are not coming out. I own an art supply store with a studio attached where I teach classes. I teach probably 95% of the classes.
Mm-hmm.
I bring in guest teachers, national and international guest teachers to lead workshops and things like that. And I have a couple of teachers. It just fluctuates. I have a couple of teachers that teach things that I don't teach. But for the most part, I am the instructor.
And the name of your store?
A Work of Heart.
A Work of Heart.
Work of Heart.
Now, I am guessing that name came with some thought behind it, some story behind it.
It's a long story. That could take the whole 20 minutes. But I started this business when my now 22-year-old was a 9-month-old on my knee.
Mm-hmm.
So 20 some odd years ago. And I started mainly in scrapbooking. That was my interest, my passion back then. And so I started a business with a friend called Scrapbooking, A Work of Heart. And then we cut the scrapbooking and I kept a work of art. That business relationship split, but I kept a work of art and just went forward with it, because really, like, everything that I do is a work of my heart. It's heart work that I do. So, you know, it's a play on words, but it's kind of like, oh, it's art, it's heart. It's, you know, it's a little cutesy. I agree, but it's stuck.
I like it.
It's stuck.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Take me to your childhood, and I just want to know a little bit about your upbringing. As far as, did you grow up in a religious home, not religious? What does your start look like?
So I was born to two 17-year-old parents, which is a little unique, I understand. But we're from a generations old, like, we were all raised Christian. And so, you know, third, fourth generation Christian household, but my parents were really young. And I was raised in the church. My mom, more than my dad, would take me to church regularly. We would always go to church on the regular. So, I mean, does that answer your question?
Yeah. I want to know a little bit also about the first time that became your own, when God got your attention.
Yeah. So I think I did what a lot of my friends did around age 12 or so. I'm like, you know, when they're doing in our denomination is like the baptismal courses and that sort of thing.
Always around age 12.
It's sort of around when I was growing up. So I'm 50 now, but like, that number of years ago, that was kind of the age, right?
Oh, we don't math. I don't like math.
I don't know. So, I mean, that was just kind of the trajectory I was going to a Christian school, and that was kind of like what we all did. And so I don't ever feel like it was really my own thing, in that it was just what everybody else was doing. So then fast forward to high school, and there was an incident. My sophomore year of high school, I was away at a boarding school because there were no schools close to where I was living in Oregon at the time. And so I was away at a boarding school, and I worked in the kitchen, and I was downstairs. So the kitchen was at the bottom of the girls' dorm, and I was staying so that I could turn the potatoes on for lunch. That was I had to stay until a certain time, turn the potatoes on for lunch.
That was your one job.
That was my one job, right? And so I was, futzing around and, doing whatever I was doing as a young adolescent. At that point, I went into the freezer, the walk-in freezer. And I don't think I've ever admitted this in public to anybody, but I was really going in to get a popsicle. But I told everybody that I was going in to get the juice concentrate to refill the juice.
I would definitely make up that.
Yeah,
too.
Right. Because what happened is I went in and I shut the door behind me.
Oh no. I know what that means.
I shut the door behind me because I was gonna, rummage around and find an ice cream bar or something like that. And it sounded funny, and I couldn't get out. It clunked a certain way. So what had happened is there was an ice block in the release.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So I'm in just a long sleeve t-shirt and jeans, and probably kids with no socks.
How long till somebody gets down there?
It was a long time. So everybody was gone. Remember, I was the only one that was there, and the lunch crew wasn't coming on for another couple hours.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm like, right. I'm praying. I'm like, God, help me. I'm running a place. I know, hello. I know you don't really know me, but, so I'm praying and I'm running in place. And not all of a sudden, it took a long time. Like, I was really, really, really cold. But eventually, I was banging on the door. Eventually, one of the kitchen workers who was off that day, he had no reason to come to the cafeteria, except that he didn't have enough room in his trash can at home to dump his trash. So he needed to come and use the dumpster at the cafeteria. Right. So he came, and what he said later is that he just wanted to check to make sure that everything, even though he wasn't on duty that day, he just wanted to make sure that everything, that the ovens were on for the potatoes and all that kind of stuff. So he comes in, and he has to come in this back door, which is unusual. and the back door is right by the freezer that I was stuck in. And so I'm like pounding on it. And he opened it up. And my first thought is, I need to go turn the ovens on. The potatoes are not going to be done. Right.
That's so sweet.
So I know it's kind of a strange moment to look back on and be like, God was so with me. There's so many things in that story that I could not deny afterwards that like, for all intents and purposes, I should have, number one, had hypothermia or like, so
it's been very, very blue upon discovery.
Yeah, I was right. And somehow a voice told me not to jump in a hot shower immediately. So I went upstairs. Like I didn't stop. Like I turned on the ovens and I went upstairs to my dorm room and I crawled under the covers, which is exactly what I should have done.
And you wouldn't know that.
I wouldn't know that. And then I took a hot shower. And then like the kitchen worker told the dean like what was going on, and they came up and they found me and they took me to the hospital. But the doctor said, if you had jumped in a hot shower, your heart would have stopped.
Oh, really?
And I mean, like in hindsight, I would have thought that would have been like my first instinct is like, oh my gosh, I'm so cold.
Yeah.
Like get in the hot shower.
Me too.
I don't know why I'm going on with this story, but it really like there were so many things that later on throughout my life, I would always look back at that story and be like, you know what? I think God's got a purpose for me, because that was one of those instances where I shouldn't have made it. Like it could have been the end for me
in a number of ways.
I mean, maybe that's super dramatic, but that's the way I chose to look at it over my life. In many instances, I'm like, no, I think there's a purpose for me, because it could have been such a different story.
That's terrifying. Despite this,
yes,
I'm only asking because I know myself. Despite this, have there been any times in your life where you have forgotten that God has purpose or call on your life?
Totally. Yeah. So then
take me to a dark spot.
Dark spot. So which one do I pick? Now, I mean, it hasn't always been dark, but there's been a lot of, and I think that's, the title of this is what, out of selfishness, and right. So my tendency is to self-soothe, I would say. And so when I'm feeling anxious or worried or whatever, I tend to like zone out with, and this is even a struggle today, like I'll zone out with Netflix. Well, that wasn't, available back in the day, but
yes, it would have been even more.
But so self-soothing rather than turning to God for the relief of anxiety or things like that. So I would say I never really felt like I fit in. Remember, I was born to young parents, and so that already sort of I was born kind of set apart from my peers in that all their parents were a little bit older and more established, right? And mine were divorced, which wasn't as common back, when I was growing up, and
a little bit of a stigma,
right? And we definitely didn't have money, so I always felt just different, out of place. Like I didn't have the clothes that my peers did, and I didn't have the resources that they did, and we didn't take the vacations that they took and all of that. So that I was always kind of feeling like a little awkward and out, not on my own. And so in college, as a way of fitting in, I would find perhaps groups of people who accepted me. And those people may have been, drinking and using drugs and things like that. And it just didn't really, I knew I was raised to, I won't say that I was exposed to it all along, because my dad ended up being a drug addict and totally out of our life by the time I was 12. But so I was exposed to that, but it didn't make the effect on me that I was like, oh no, I won't do any of that. Right. But just to fit in, because here's a group of people that are all of a sudden like, no, you're cool. You can, come hang out with us. Right.
It's such a testimony to what acceptance,
how important acceptance is, right?
When you go to the gym and you see like no judgment zone and whatever, just because you put it on a wall doesn't mean everybody adopts it. But if we could adopt that as a Christian community of faith, and we could realize what's at stake if we do or don't accept people, like
Yeah.
I think we'd be doing a lot better job at showing Christ's love. But
yeah,
that's where you were.
right.
You wanted that.
So I wanted to fit in. I wanted to fit in. And then there's the side added effect that drugs and alcohol had on me is that it made me not care so much about fitting in. Right. So then all of a sudden you're doing something to fit in, and the result of taking whatever it is into your body made you not really care about fitting in, or you felt a different way.
It's a bit freeing.
It is a bit freeing. It was. And, I liked it. And
when people tell me that they, get started in this, like, I totally understand it.
Yeah.
I totally understand it. If it's for medicinal purposes and you're blocking out a greater pain in your life, all these things make complete sense in the world we live in. But, I never felt like I had such a great set of parents. I never felt like I needed it. But that's God's grace on my life, because I totally get it. And even now, people laugh, but like, addiction to sugar is a real addiction. 100%. Addiction to flowers, really.
100%.
We all struggle with this self-soothing. Yeah.
And I've identified over the years that I am addicted to changing the way that I feel.
Interesting.
And there are healthy ways to change the way you feel, and there are unhealthy ways to change the way you feel. But for me, if I'm feeling feelings that are uncomfortable, or I'm not familiar with, or are just too much, I want to change it.
Can you tell me, take me to a point, a day in time where you knew that you had an addiction and that you needed to do something? Were there any moments?
There were a lot of moments. So I think my addictive nature started way when I was little. I don't recognize it I didn't recognize it then. I recognize it in hindsight, right? So this was a story long time in the making. But I wouldn't say I used drugs and alcohol addictively the way that I did in the end, until the stressors of being a parent came up. Ooh, I'm going to get really teary now. That was a lot.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for somebody who wanted kids so badly.
Huge blessing.
Huge blessing.
At times.
At times, yeah. Huge blessing. I adore these kids, but that was really hard. And for somebody who was raised as an only child, I had no idea what that was like. So I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've got 3 kids, 5 and under. And it was a lot. And so there were times where I would need to get away. And I'm blessed with just a magnificent husband who was super supportive and is still super supportive.
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
He's a good guy. Yeah, he's a keeper. So he would give me the freedom to, when he was home, I could go take off and do things with my girlfriends and stuff like that. And so those were the times that a lot of times I repeated old behavior, and I would find friends who would, smoke weed and drink and that sort of thing. And I felt like at that time I was really living a completely double life, because here I am, mom, soccer mom, church leader, all of that, which is why it makes me really nervous to get on, but it's okay. I'm not looking at the camera.
No,
we're just talking to you. It's all good. Right.
So
but it's just like, I totally lived this double life. There was this moment when I could just be off the clock, not have to have my responsibilities, and just check out for a minute. Remember, I'm addicted to changing the way that I feel. And so whatever can get me there fastest.
Yes, that's the answer.
That's the answer. And so whoever I was around that was going to help facilitate that's what I would gravitate towards. And so, yeah, there were points and times where I was like, why in the world am I doing this? And I would say that to myself. And the answer was like, because you can.
It wasn't causing enough pain.
It wasn't causing enough pain. It wasn't enough chaos. My bottom wasn't low enough at that point. I was still maintaining this facade of I'm holding it all together. Nobody knows. It's okay. I can still show up at church.
Sure.
And I can still show up at school, sometimes with sunglasses on, but I can still show up at school. No.
Yeah.
But
why did it have to stop? Like, did God get your attention? Was there a blow up?
So, many times there were times where I tried to stop. My husband, I finally told him what was going on, and that was a huge step for me. It was a huge step for me, but even that wasn't enough to make me quit for good and for all.
Because you knew that you were supposed to, but
right?
You didn't.
Yeah. So it didn't take, and I think that the way that I was using was really to get into that I don't care mode, right?
Like, everything's all right.
It's okay. It's all right. I'm and the enemy, I personify addiction and just call my addiction my enemy. So, the enemy wanted me separated from God, separated from God's love, separated from the solution. So it's a spiritual malady with a spiritual solution. It's not some substance that I'm going to put in my body, but the enemy was like, you deserve to check out. You've worked hard. Kids are hard. Family's hard. You deserve this. Right. So,
which are all true.
Which are all true. Absolutely. Really, and with my substance of choice, there was also that added, it's just a natural herb. It just grows in your garden. At least it's not, because I wasn't drinking alcoholically back then. So it's like, at least I'm not an alcoholic where I'm drinking, all the time and I'm killing my liver, right? It's just an herb. So there was that. The enemy was really whispering that in my ear really hard too.
Right. And were you still having some guilt over it or whatever? Like,
I don't
want to take, I know what the Christian and church position is on all of these things, but the reason why I care, is because I know it's at least a temporary help. Like, I really do get
I get it. I get it.
So what was the downside that made you finally, for yourself?
Yeah. So for myself, I could not take the mental anguish anymore. I couldn't take it. I could not take the, just that complete empty whole feeling, empty, like not whole, WHOLE, right? But HOLE, like that emptiness inside. I felt like I was just barely holding it together on the outside. I had this sort of tenuous relationship with God. I knew that he existed. I knew that he cared about me, but I felt like I was doing this to myself. And so any pain that I was feeling, I felt like I deserved it.
Ooh, that's rough.
Yeah. And so I didn't ever really feel like I could go to God and say, please relieve me of this addiction, because I wasn't quite sure that I was addicted, even though, like, in hindsight, of course, it's so clear in hindsight, but in it. So what I really came to that point where I was like, yeah, something's got to give. It was in 2009. And I felt so empty inside. And so, like, every reason that I was using to quiet down those voices, like when I would use, the voices weren't quieting down anymore. The anxiety was not going away. It was heightening, increasing. Right? And I'm like, okay, this is not working anymore. And that's what you hear in the rooms of recovery. You hear, like, I used it as like you were saying, I used it as a tool, and for a while it was working, and then it didn't work anymore. And so it didn't work anymore. And I'm like, okay, something's got to give. I've got to try something. And I had been introduced to the rooms of recovery through a business associate. And I just thought, okay, I'm willing to do anything. So January 1st, 2009, I found at that point the recovery program that I went into online. And I read that website from one end to the other. And I went to a meeting a couple of days later, and that was my original sobriety date. And I was just like, wow, this is fantastic. I'm in a room of people who totally get it, who totally get how much, how I felt.
Yeah.
And there was a God aspect in there, and there is a God aspect in recovery, right? It's basically based on the Beatitudes. Did you know that? In the Sermon on the Mount.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did know I mean, they always talk about your higher power.
And they do that just to be more inclusive of everyone. They don't want anybody to feel like they can't get recovery if they can't get God.
Like, I can't see God a certain way, so I guess I'm out.
Right.
No, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
So it was really helpful in 2009 to find that. It was super a pivotal moment for me. And things started getting a lot better. It's amazing.
Well, we could probably talk about ups and downs from there, but I want to move on because when I asked if you would be willing, you talked about selfishness being another big thing that God has been working with you on. Can you tell me about?
Yeah. So I think when I filled out that thing, I was just like, okay, I've got to remember to do this. Type it up, and I'm like, yeah, I can fall into that selfish trap. And even though I don't use drugs or alcohol to change the way that I feel now, at the core, what was guiding me, what was drawing me, what the enemy was drawing me in with was that self-soothing, the self-focus, I deserve this. I've worked so hard. Oh, that person really irritated me. So let me self-soothe. Let me change the way that I feel here, self-soothe. And so I'm just more aware of the way that I look at myself. And the one thing that I found in recovery that is just a total game changer is being in service to other people.
Wow. I'm freaking out a little bit. It's very convicting. And for those of you who are watching, it might be convicting you as well, because who hasn't had the same comment on a big old slice of cake when you know that you're already struggling to follow, what God would want you to do with your body, or, I deserve this talk. Yeah. I've definitely used that.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes, like, when you're doing what you should be doing for R&R, you still say, I deserve that. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we know?
Well, there's a healthy balance. There's a healthy boundaries and things like that. And I think that that's just, my life trajectory is what the path that God is taking me on is figuring that out. But I can guarantee you that when I wake in the morning, and as soon as I wake up, when I connect to God and I say, okay, God, I don't know what the day has in store for me, but you do. I want to be your servant today. I want you to empower me to be able to reach as many people as possible with your love. I want them to experience that through me. Help me prioritize. There are so many things that are vying for my attention. Help me prioritize and do your will today. If that's my prayer in the morning, things tend to go better. And if that's my prayer in the morning, when I find myself, instead of reaching for the Bible, reaching for my phone and mindlessly scrolling through social media, I get that little twinge in the back of my mind. And I'm like, oh, it's probably not the best use of your time right now. Because like, our time is our most valuable commodity that we have. And how I use my time.
I'm 100% with you.
Yeah. How I use my time is, so I'm glad that I identify as an addict, because then I understand those tendencies to, my tendency to zone out, to watch, binge watch Netflix or scroll through social media mindlessly. I'm very aware of that.
Things that seem very much less damaging.
Right. Yeah.
But that they're still self-centered, self-soothing.
Self-centered, self-soothing, self-focused, not spiritually minded.
And they're not going to solve anything. It's just a temporary, right?
It's not like, if I can remind myself every day what my mission is.
Yes. I'm big on the mission mindedness.
Right. And the way that I spend my time should be focused on what my mission is. Does it further my mission? That's the way I should be spending my time. When I'm not spending my time, and my mission can be to be healthy. And so if that means take a nap because I need some more rest, like, there's balance there. I'm not saying like you can't do, get out in nature, take a nap, take a walk, go to the gym, whatever, eat healthy food. And there is nothing wrong with Netflix. I'm not saying that,
No,
I nix that all
I
at
hope
all.
nobody interpreted that.
No, but I'm just saying, like, this balance in life. And if I just have to I have to stay aware of that. And so when I identify as an addict in a Christian environment, sometimes people get the wrong impression of that. And I want to take the stigma off of that. And I want to be like, you know what, we all struggle with stuff. Just because your struggle wasn't drugs and alcohol like mine was, doesn't mean that we don't struggle with the same feelings of like, I just want to check out. It's been a hard day. I'd like to just check out.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for people who are open to share their stories. And I'm so grateful for people who are raising the next generation to not see, to not see somebody with a struggle as a bad person. I think, kind of growing up, I heard a little bit of that in church, like, oh, that person, it felt like they were saying that's a bad person, although those words never left anyone's lips. But to look through the eyes of Christ and see every single person as, if your mission is to share the love of Jesus, to see every single person as a potential recipient of God's love. And for the ones who seem to be struggling, apparently, glaringly, how much more so, right? Like to not look with judging eyes, but to look with Christ's eyes.
Can I just share one super pivotal moment after I found my way into recovery was when a pastor came to our church and was preaching, and he was in recovery. And I'm like, oh, finally, somebody who I can relate to. And my husband also really, really connected with him. And so I'm talking to this pastor and sharing with him sort of my struggles and how at that time, I get teary again. At that time, I was really struggling with feeling less than. With feeling less than. And my husband is just, he's a righteous man. He's a man of God. I adore him, and he's just the greatest, but I really felt less than him, like here I had these,
he's a leader,
these worldly struggles, right. That he didn't have. And this pastor, Matthew, looked at me and he goes, Andrea, you will be able to reach people for God that your husband never could.
That's right. They'll never feel understood.
That was the most powerful realization I ever had, that my struggles in my past, the poor choices that I made, that God could use for good. Not only could God use for good, he has uniquely equipped me to reach people.
That's right.
That people who haven't had those struggles just couldn't reach. Like you can't give what you don't have. You can't share what you don't know. You can't, like, I'm not saying that people who don't struggle with addiction can't reach other, can't, but I'm uniquely equipped. And that's just such a beautiful thing coming out of something that, again, could have been life ending. Right. Yeah. So again, I know that God has a purpose for me. Back around to the whole, locked in the freezer. I was locked in the prison of my own addiction, and God gave me freedom. And with that freedom, I have the ability to reach people and share my experience, my strength, and the hope that I have in God.
Wow. Yeah, I think I heard it, and it sounds trite, but I still love it. Your mess will become your message. Your test will become your testimony. And it's not like God planned that for your wanted for.
No, I don't. That wasn't. Yeah, and you hear that, like, it was not God's purpose for me to become an addict and an alcoholic. However,
but now,
right
now, people will feel that you're with them.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you could talk to them, but now you're on their team. Now you can be a partner.
Yeah, I get it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
How do you take this that God has given you and use it in your everyday life? Like, what's pragmatic? Like how does that approach come with you in your business, your parenting, your being a wife? How does what God's given you show itself in life where it didn't before?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot of the approach of where I find my strength, the wisdom that I learn in the rooms of recovery, for one thing, and in church, but a lot of the rooms of recovery is a spiritual base for things. And so I can share with the people in my business, in my work life, my students, if they're opening up and they're sharing that they're struggling with something, I can share that the wisdom that I've experienced, right? I can share how I get through to how I approach things. The tools that I use to stay sober are tools for living. It's not just, oh, I'm trying to stay sober. It's just like, I'm just trying to live one day at a time, like being the best I can be with God's help and reaching as many people with his love as I can. So does that answer your question? Like
it's giving you tools.
It's totally giving me tools.
And you feel empowered and able to bring it up. I know you never want to be pushy about faith.
No,
you never, but people do come to you and open up to you. And
and I just share, I'm pretty open about, I share, like right now, I'm really experiencing a huge shift in my business because of what's going on with the virus. And, it's a huge shift for me to experience. And I get to say, like, what I can do is make sure that everything is clean, right? And wash my hands and pray. Right? I can pray. God has not brought me this far to be like, okay, you're on your own.
Right.
Right. And so I express it just like that to my clients who may not have a spiritual relationship or a relationship with God. I'm like, I trust that through this, God has me. Like, whatever that means, right? Whatever that means, I trust that it'll all be okay.
Yeah. Andrea, there are a few people watching online right now, and I know there's going to be more watching the replay later. I just want to encourage you guys, if you're watching and you have a question for Andrea, you can go ahead. I know there's a little bit of a lag. You've been on the other side of this.
Yeah, I was on last week.
And there's a little bit of a lag. So if you have a question for Andrea, but also want to invite you to get out I asked you to bring a prop if you wanted to.
Oh, I did.
And there's something cute that we want to share
show
with you.
Yeah. So you said, I don't know, like a prop, but I was thinking like tools that I use.
Oh yeah.
I know, but I use my phone. I know, who doesn't? There's no live link. There's no live link on the church. Oh, okay, never mind. That's a text. I'm just making sure that it wasn't about this.
Oh.
So when I'm struggling now, rather than putting on that facade and just holding it all together, I pick up my phone and I talk to somebody and I'm transparent with somebody. That's not the old Andrea. The old Andrea wanted to hold it all together. Didn't want you to know. Didn't want you to get close. You come to church and you're like, how's it going? Everything's great. I'm real. I'm real. And I have people that I connect with and they don't co-sign my bad attitude. Right?
You found some accountability.
Oh, yeah. It's so important. And when I have a few extra minutes in the car or whatever, I'm going to make an outreach call. I'm going to call somebody and say, hey, how are you doing today? And when people call and I know, are in my, or even when I don't know who it is that's calling, because people have my number, I pick up the phone. I listen and that's what I can do. The other thing is I do a lot of writing. I write 3 pages longhand a day, and it's a form of prayer and meditation and brain dump and all of that.
Wow.
And I know that life goes much better for me when I take that time. Can you hear it?
I don't know.
They're waking up.
There's another cute thing over there. Yeah. We might get out in a minute.
So we can. So anyway, those are my 2 tools. You asked me to bring like tools or props. And I'm like, yeah, those are my dailies.
Okay.
Like I'm on the phone taking outreach calls or making outreach calls. And that's another form of service. Like I mentioned it before. Service is what gets me out of selfishness. Being in service to other people, being present for other people, listening. That's what gets me out of selfishness. And really my disease is a disease of self-centered, self-focused selfishness, right? Self-soothing, any of the other selves you can put on there.
Right. And I like self-soothing because, there are justifiable, terrible things in this world that make you want to do that, right? So it's not a judgment call.
No.
These things are terrible and real, and they're happening, and we should feel some need to change our situation. It's not how we were meant to be or to live. Right. So all this is normal and natural. But I love how you're saying, like, but what do we do? What do we do? And a lot of times growing up, I would hear pastors or preachers, and I always had kind of an interest in spiritual things, talking about room for the Holy Spirit. But if we are so self-focused, which is just natural and normal, like if we're naturally inward focused, there isn't room for the spirit of any other. Right. There's no room for the spirit of God. And so in order to push self out, you have to bring something else in.
Right.
It can't just be an empty vacuum. And so you're saying that service is...
I'm saying that service is that thing for me. And then as you were talking, there's self-soothing, turning to some outside force. And what I find so much more lasting and immediate, more immediate than any drug I ever experienced, is prayer. I can pray, God, I am not okay with the way that I'm feeling right now. Please relieve me of this. And literally it's as if it's just washed over me, this feeling of peace, right? And that's what I want to turn to, rather than, picking up a cookie or flipping on the TV or something like that, right? But I can only identify that I'm at dis-ease, at discomfort, and I need that solution. How do you...
Reading.
I can't read it.
Let me read. Putting Lisa Mitchell up there. It's like your story was meant for me right now. Not to zone out under the roots of feeling connected. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thanks, Lisa.
And Denise says, how do you deal with judgmental Christians lovingly?
I know we all struggle with our own thing. And so judgment, sometimes it comes from a place of a lack of understanding. It took me a long time to get there, but what somebody thinks of me is none of my business. It's just not. I just do the best I can with what I have. And usually it has to turn to compassion, because their judgment is some sort of reflection of wherever they are. And I know what I'm trying to do. And I know that what God is doing through me. And so, if they have judgment over, what my past choices are not my choices today. So it's a hard one, judgmental Christians, but usually it's because there's something in them that really, sort of rubbing them the wrong way. They're like, they don't want to admit that maybe, the little extra chocolate cake at the potluck, and they're like,
It usually comes out of self-righteousness or fear, right? So either side of that highway is a ditch. And Denise, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Have you ever had to confront that, or like verbally confront it?
Oh man, confrontation is not my thing. I usually avoid it. I usually avoid it.
That's why you got married, so that you could have a husband to deal with it.
Yeah. No. He's good at that, but it's not my strong suit, but I'm getting better at it, because, God always gives you opportunities. If you put your life in his hands, he always gives you opportunities to grow in areas that he needs you to grow in. And so, if there's confrontation that I need to get to, boundaries, right? Yes. Boundaries that I need to learn to set, those situations are going to keep coming up. He's my strength trainer in that. He's going to give me opportunities to build my strength in that area.
Amen.
Yeah.
Before we go.
Yes. You want me to get one of the little squeakers out?
Yeah, okay. I just want people to get to know you a little bit better. And another way that you serve is by taking care of animals. So
I just got these little guys today. So I foster for the county. I foster kittens, specifically bottle babies, for the county. And I just...
What does that mean? They're just
too young? That means they're too young
And they can't latch on to anybody else. It's a chorus.
Yeah, they hear me. Okay, so where's your camera? Right. This is a little. She's 10 days old. Her eyes are just now starting to open.
Oh,
Can
my
you see her?
So
yeah, she's very noisy.
cute.
It's very noisy. So we're coming up with names. There's 5 of them in here. We're coming up with names, and we think, like, in the climate that we've got going on right now, they're going to be scientist kittens.
Great.
So we're coming up with scientist names for them. There's 3 boys and 2 girls. So, any suggestions for names?
Oh yeah.
But they're like 10 days old, and they have to be 1.5 pounds to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, depending on how well they eat and how well they grow, and if they stay healthy, it could be like 8 weeks from now before they get to that.
A little time, but
a little bit of time. Yeah. But if you want to come see kittens, I bring them with me to work every day. So you can come by my studio and come visit kittens.
Do you want to give an address?
Sure. I'm at 176 Race Street in San Jose, California. So if you're in the Bay Area, I know, this is not just Bay Area, but if you're in the Bay Area, A Work of Heart Studio is open Sunday through Thursday. And
get some kitten therapy.
Come get some kitten therapy and buy some art supplies. Or take a class. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Before we go,
yeah,
if anyone is struggling to overcome
please,
some of the things that we've been talking about,
100%,
what advice or what resources, or can you share any parting words?
I mean, AA is a wonderful program, Alcoholics Anonymous. There is, there are people there. I've been really blessed to find people with just some amazing wisdom, God-centered recovery. I lead a group here, that Celebrate Recovery is another one to look for. So I know there are Celebrate Recoveries out there. I mean, I don't know how they can connect with you, but I'd be happy to field any phone calls.
Yeah, if you guys leave comments or want to get in touch with Andrea, I'll send those out to you.
Yeah, for sure.
And then my last question is, I love how you talked about your husband, supportive, how you kind of handled this as a team. What about somebody who's watching this and thinking, that's my spouse going through that? Maybe they've just shared, or I think that they might be having this double life. What can they do to be an encouragement and not send it further underground or not make it a scary?
Well, I mean, there's a program for that too. It's called Al-Anon.
Oh yeah.
But that's a great question. I know that there's a viewer on here who, if she ever got on, did she ever get on? It's the top one there.
I'm not sure.
No. Prayer, right? I'm not the one. I don't know that I'm not the one to ask. Like his grace was so amazing, and I know that, I'm not the one to ask, but it's something to think about. I know there's resources for that. I just don't.
But we can maybe get your husband on sometime. And get his perspective a little bit on the other side and what he was thinking and feeling and how he decided to be supportive. So
for sure.
But anyway, that his loving attitude must have done.
It really did. It was it was amazing. And I do I work on a living amends, which is just making up for my poor choices by making better choices now on a day-to-day basis. So
thank you for sharing with us, Andrea. Appreciate you having the time, making the time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
For us today. And next Tuesday, I think, is our next live stream. I'm going to have my friend Lori Smith on. She's going to talk about the discovery of grace and finding relationship with God versus some of the rules that she grew up with. So join us for that. It will be Tuesday, I think, either 10 or 10:30. But we'll keep you posted. If you're on YouTube, you can hit the little bell to be notified when we're going live. And if you're on Facebook, tough cookies, friends. You just have to get there. I'm just kidding. Either way, happy to see you guys later. Thanks for joining us. And as always, I'm wishing you joy and peace for your journey. Until we see you again, bye for now.